Hello everyone, it's Jo here from Daisy. Welcome to my 2024 setup series. I've been busy since last week's video and have completed my journal key and cover page. I've gone for a little quote to match the coffee motif on the front of the journal with just a touch of leopard print to tie it into the overall theme. As a recap, last week I created my 2024 highlights page along with my future log, which I've set up in a vertical Dutch door style. If you'd like to watch this video first, I'll pop a link above. Today I'm going to go ahead and create a spread dedicated to my word of the year. In order to choose my word, I completed our word of the year worksheet, which is available as a download from our website. I'll pop the details for that in the description to the video too, along with the supplies I've used today. Before I continue with the setup, I wanted to take a moment to invite you all to join our Journal with Daisy programme. We have built together a step-by-step guide for setting up your perfect journal, with guidance in the form of blog posts, step-by-step videos and digital downloads like the Word of the Year worksheet I'm going to be using. In order to join, all that we ask is that you make a small donation to our chosen charity, St Clair Hospice. There's no minimum donation, just give what you can afford. To find out more, head to the link on the screen. Before I go through my process of choosing my Word of the Year, a few pointers for my setup. Before I began filming, I sketched out my spread in pencil. It features the word of the year in the centre, with areas to add the word's meaning, my reason for choosing it, and ways that I'll be applying it into my day-to-day life. As with my whole journal setup, I'll be using the font Blossom for my headers and key text, and for this spread I'm utilising our XL font, which is a pocket stencil set, with each of the letters around 5 cm in height. This makes a great focus for a page like this. Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty of choosing my word of the year. A word of the year is a word chosen by you to represent what you want your next 12 months to look like. It's different to a New Year's resolution in that it isn't just about changing one particular element of your life. Instead, it can help form a roadmap for all of your goals, actions, and behaviours. If you spent any time in the bullet journaling community, you will likely have come across this concept, and you may be wondering if you actually need one. The short answer is no, you don't need a word of the year in order to bullet journal, but there are a few reasons why you might find one useful. You can use your word to help set goals and decide what habits to track. It's a way to manifest how you want your year to look like, and it provides a focus to check in on throughout the year. It may be that a word pops into your head as soon as you start thinking about the concept, and if that's the case, then fab, you have your word of the year. But if it doesn't, then using a handy worksheet might be for you. The Daisy process for deciding upon the word of the year has 4 steps, simplified using the acronym LIST. The first letter L stands for look back. Reflecting on the last 12 months, think about what went well and what were your favourite moments. For me, my favourite moments included a couple of trips away in the UK with time spent away from work. I had success in growing my YouTube channel and also making it through a few tricky spots with my business as a result of the cost of living crisis. The second letter, I, stands for imagine. Now think about the next 12 months, what would you like it to look like? I would like to enjoy more downtime, being more present and not preoccupied with work while I do so. I'd like to feel less anxious and less under pressure. The third letter, S, stands for shortlist. From everything you've captured in step 1 and 2, do any words stand out to you? For me, the words be present, mindfulness, joyful and balance made up the start of my shortlist. The final letter T stands for target, and it's time for you to choose your final word. If you find that your ideas for step 3 aren't exactly right, then using a thesaurus may help you find something more unusual that captures exactly what you're looking for. As you can see from the spread, the word that I decided upon for my 2024 word of the year is unplugged. I chose this because it represents what I would like to do more of in the next 12 months in order to have a better work-life balance. I love my work, and because of this I find it very hard to switch off in non-working time, especially because any access to my phone provides a link to work and the journaling community via email and social media. This makes it really difficult to switch off because I can always just quickly answer a question or reply to a query. Being more consciously unplugged on a regular basis will allow me to be more present during my downtime and less likely to be distracted by work-related tasks that could easily wait until the next working day. With my word decided upon, I've spent some time thinking about how I will use this to guide my goals and habits throughout the year. I absolutely love the idea of a year in pixel spread where one habit is tracked for the entire year. However, I always find that once the novelty of the habit has worn off, I forget to track, leaving a blank spread at the end of the journal. After 8 years of journaling, I've never managed to complete a spread like this. I finally accepted that it's unlikely to change, and I've looked for an alternative way to include a year in pixels style spread in my journal. This year, I plan on choosing a single habit for each month, collating them together for a monthly year in pixels spread, which contains an individual tracker for each of the months of the year and space to record what habit I am focusing on each month. I'm hoping that the novelty of picking a new focus each month will keep this fresh and help me reach my goal of tracking for a whole year. I will add a couple of habit ideas to the unplug spread to get started, with the flexibility to choose different habits as the year goes on. In addition to my monthly habits, I also wanted to set myself a challenge and an unplugged goal for the year to encourage me to spend more time away from my phone, being present in the current moment. When setting any goal, I use the acronym SMART as a guideline. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timed. So rather than saying next year I'll spend more time unplugged, which is a pretty vague statement and therefore really difficult to say with any accuracy whether you've actually achieved it, I've thought more specifically on how I could do this in an enjoyable and measurable way and have decided upon the following goal. In 2024, I will visit the cinema 24 times. This goal will be captured in my journal in a 24 in 24 style setup, with 24 spaces to record the films I go to see and when I see them. This goal follows the SMART rule as it outlines exactly what I need to do. I can easily measure if I've done it. It is achievable and realistic, 2 cinema visits a month, and I know when I need to complete it by. Visiting the cinema is something I hugely enjoy, and because of this, I have an unlimited cinema pass that means I can go as often as I am able without any additional payment. The biggest challenge for me is setting aside the time to do it, and this is something I want to focus more on in 2024. When at the cinema, it is enforced that I be unplugged from emails and social media, so it's a great way to implement my word of the year into regular practice in a way that it is fun for me. Win-win. Once my word of the year spread is complete, I will go ahead and create spreads for my monthly year in pixels and 24 in 24 spreads. These I will set up off camera, so if you want to see what I've created, you'll need to come back and watch next week's video. If you're enjoying this video, this is a great time to remind you to hit subscribe to the channel. It really helps to make sure that our videos get seen by the right people and also make sure that you don't miss our next setup or live stream. Back to the spread, you can see that I'm creating a scrapbook style layout, making the box with the words definition look like a ripped piece of paper. I've also added another large box at the top of the spread to capture my why, and the smaller boxes added to the bottom of the page will contain habit ideas and other ideas for how I can implement my chosen word into my day-to-day life. I've used the Blossom font stencil to add the mini headers to this area as a bit of further decoration. In addition to the cinema, some other areas for how I can implement my word of the year include journaling and crafts. One of the downsides of starting a business based on your own hobbies is that it can have the effect of making it feel like work, or having guilt in doing this hobby and not recording it for content. I'd like to do more journaling for fun, not recording the process for a YouTube video or part of a plan with me, but purely for my own enjoyment. After all, my love for journaling was the reason why I started Upsadaisy in the first place. I'm not very good at sitting still and relaxing, so crafts such as knitting and crochet will help me to unplug but still be busy with my hands, which works for me and how my brain works. By having busy, productive hands, I will have less time for doom scrolling social media or being tempted to work while I sat in front of the TV. The habit suggestions that I've started with include switching up my morning and evening routines to remove any temptation to scroll my phone or check my email. After reading the book Atomic Habits, I intend to do this by habit stacking, which is the process of bundling an enjoyable habit with something you want to start doing. For my morning routine, rather than immediately checking my phone as soon as I wake up, I want to switch it up so that it doesn't happen until after my shower while I'm having my morning coffee, meaning that I'm up, showered, dressed and ready to go before I get sucked into work. This is all something I plan on looking more at in 2024, so stay tuned to the channel if you'd like a closer look at my process. With the structure of the spread set up, I'll add finishing details of how each of the unplugged ideas might be applied to my life. The whole spread acting as a reminder for why I've chosen this word as my focus. Once all the writing is complete, I will go ahead and add some decoration to bring the whole thing to life. Sticking with the colour scheme I've used for my future log setup, which was a combination of our Don't Worry, Be Happy and Wild Journaling subscription box themes, I will utilise washi tape to add decoration to each of the text boxes. I will add small pieces of washi tape across the corners of the boxes to make it look like they're stuck down on the page and to emphasise the scrapbook style that I've gone for with this spread. For the large boxes across the top of the page, I will use our Don't Worry, Be Happy washi tape, which is a standard 15mm wide washi. For the smaller boxes across the bottom of the spread, I will use our skinny yellow washi tape, which is 6mm wide. I experimented with the positioning of these pieces of tape on the page to achieve a balanced overall effect, rather than having them on the same place on each of the text boxes. As you can see, I'm using a craft knife to cut the washi to size. Continuing the same colour scheme, font and style across all of my pages of my initial journal setup creates a cohesive style which I really like. However, that being said, this is a great time to point out that there are no rules to journal setup. If you want to use a different colour palette on every page, totally do it. If you want to have no decoration and keep it really simple, totally do that. Trying to follow a set of rules that doesn't work for you will only spoil any fun you might have with the process. While I've decided to add a word of the year to my journal setup for 2024, I have set up many journals where I haven't done this, so don't be afraid to have fun and experiment with what works for you. After I added the Don't Worry, Be Happy and skinny yellow washi tape, I decided that it was missing something pretty big from this spread when compared to my future log setup. There was no leopard print pattern. So I decided to try out an effect that I've seen quite a few journalers use, which is to use washi tape to colour in some wording. In order to do this, you lay strips of the washi over each of the individual letters and then cut away the excess using a craft knife. I've done this before on single letters or short words, but this is my first time using this technique for such a large area, and I definitely learned a few things in the process. The first thing I would say is that this is a hell of a lot easier to do if you've opted for a simpler font without lots of curved lines and embellishments. The straight-sided letters that I filled, such as the N and the L, were so much easier to cut to shape. Make sure your font is chunky to give you an easier time and with less tiny cuts to make. The Blossom font that I chose for this spread wasn't actually too bad from that perspective and wasn't too fiddly to cut. Something like our Apricots script font would have been a complete nightmare. When you choose a washi tape, you need to consider if you want to be able to notice the strips of washi that fill the letters. The leopard pattern has quite a small motif, and as such it wasn't obviously visible where strips of washi join side by side. If you decide to use a washi with a bigger pattern, the strips of tape will be more obvious, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it will affect how the overall spread looks. You could totally exaggerate this by filling your word with a bunch of different washi tapes, which would be a really fun way of adding a big header to your page. In order to cut the washi tape to shape, you will need a sharp craft knife. I've linked the one I've used in my supplies list in this video's description. It's a very fine line between cutting with enough pressure to cut the washi, but not so much that you cut through the page to the other side. I did actually do this in one area of the spread, which I will show you in the final reveal at the end of the video. It's also a lot easier to peel back the unwanted pieces of washi tape if you have a pair of fine tweezers, but you do need to be careful not to poke a hole in your page with these too. If you're worried about damaging your journal page, there are a couple of ways that you could use this effect without running the risk of cutting a hole in the page. Firstly, write the word on a separate piece of paper and then fill with washi as I have on this page. Once all the delicate cutting has been done, cut around the word to create a completed decorative piece that you can add to your page. Alternatively, lay strips of washi across a separate piece of paper, trace your word on the reverse of the page with each letter mirrored so they're back to front, and then cut out the individual letters with scissors. This will give you individual letters decorated with the washi pattern that you can glue directly into your journal. Whichever way you opt to do this technique, it is without doubt very time consuming, but hopefully you will agree that it is worth the time, as the effect at the end is very cool. I'd love to know if this is something you would try out in your journal. If you're happy to share, I'd also love to know if you've chosen to include a word of the year in your next journal setup, and if so, what word have you picked? While I finish filling in my letters, I will recap my plan for the remaining pages in this journal setup. As I mentioned above, I will complete my word of the year layout, and then I'm going to add in my 24 in 2024 spread and year in pixels monthly tracker. Once they are done, I'm going to start looking at collections, and that's actually the focus of next week in the Journal with Oops a Daisy programme. Today's spread in real time took around an hour and 20 minutes to create, with over half of that spent on the leopard print washi effect. Although for me that's a lot of time to spend on one double page spread, I thoroughly enjoyed the process, and I think it was worthwhile because the effect at the end was very cool. The start of a new journal, a bit like the start of a new year, is an opportunity to set intentions and start afresh, and for me, word of the year is part of that. It's important to remember that simply setting a word of the year will not in itself create change. Set a time to check in with your word and reflect on how you feel. This can be a part of your end of month process, as a quarterly review, or even just when you migrate from your current journal. The reflection process should in itself be a SMART goal. You could add a space to do this right at the start of your journal, with space to reflect at regular intervals. Be realistic at how often you will have the time to do this. Don't set yourself up for failure. If at the point of review you're finding that you are deviating off track, checking in regularly will allow you to notice this and make changes. It may be that you need to adjust your goals or just need a kick up the bum to focus on what's important to you. For me, this will mean I'm not taking time to unplug and I'm not progressing with my 24 in 24 goal or monthly habit tracker. I know this is important to not only my work-life balance but also my health in general, but it's easy to get wrapped up in day-to-day life and forget your priorities. However, this is why I journal, with it being the ideal place to capture those thoughts and feelings and adjust me back on course. With the spread nearly complete, it's time to take a closer look at the journal setup so far. I am loving this bright and bold colour scheme. I have my cover page and key, followed by a 2024 highlights page and my future log, which is a Dutch door style spread. I did make a boo-boo and cut through the page when I set up my word of the year, as you can see on this page here. But I think I can fix that with some strategically placed dot grid paper. My finished word of the year page is my favourite spread so far. I love how the leopard print turned out and it was totally worth the time that it took. Thank you for planning along with me today. Take care and I will see you again very soon.